Well, all right. It's time for us to go ahead and get started, and it's so good to see everybody. It just makes my day to get to see all your smiling faces. And today we're going to be kicking off a series on roundtable events, and this is going to be a series we're going to be in here for a few months. And today we're going to be looking at roundtable ready and just kind of building those intentional spaces for community growth. And so, as you guys all know, the goal of a roundtable, or some of you guys call these marriage champion breakfast, or maybe you call it, maybe it's a marriage champion lunch, whatever you call them, we know that really the goal is to create a space where relationships are built and trust is formed, and really you want to add value, and that's really where the movement begins to thrive. And so today we've got some really great speakers who are going to help us learn what that looks like in real life. And so before we get started, I do want to just post in the chat real quick, who have you gathered around the table in your community so far? So maybe it's pastors, maybe it's community leaders, church leaders, cross sector leaders, or maybe the answer is you haven't yet had the chance to gather people at a roundtable event. So maybe your answer is not yet, but we'd like to see you post that in the chat. And while you're posting in the chat, I do want to remind you that today's session is being recorded and it will be shared with you in my follow-up email next week. And so just be on the lookout for that. And then also want to let you know that there will be a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the call today where you're going to have the opportunity to ask questions, or we really want to hear you share your experience with roundtable events. And so that'll be coming up. We do always want to start our time together in prayer. And so I would love to introduce to you Calvin Phillips from the Austin Marriage Initiative. And Calvin is faithfully serving couples and families in the Austin area. And we're just really grateful for his leadership and his heart. So, Calvin, would you open our time together in prayer today, sir?
Gladly. Let's do, guys. Father God, we're grateful that you love us, that you say where two or more are gathered, you're there. So though we're coming together through Star Trek technology, you're there with us. We're thankful for that. Thankful for creating marriage. Thank you that you thought it up and that you made it, and you made it a wonderful way to see how the Trinity loves one another. Lord, as we enter this time, help us to learn how to keep sharpening our swords and help getting better and better at reaching our community for you. We ask in your name, Jesus. Amen.
All right. Thank you so much, Calvin. We really do appreciate you leading us in prayer today. Well, okay. Our first speakers today are Dave and Cheryl Belden, and they've been doing incredible work bringing leaders together in their community for many years now. And so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Dave and Cheryl. They've been married for almost 45 years. Yay
Wow.
for that. And they are the executive directors of the Healthy Marriage Coalition in Fresno, California. Dave is a former business owner, and Cheryl is a retired teacher. And they volunteered with the Healthy Marriage Coalition for 9 years before coming on staff in 2015. And so together they have successfully come alongside churches to promote healthy marriage. And they have two married children and six grandchildren. That's the best part. And these two lead an amazing team, and they have really impacted the city of Fresno. So today they're going to share lessons from their experience on hosting roundtables, and I'm sure they're going to talk a little bit about tri-tip burritos. They always got to have those and what's worked really well for them. So Dave and Cheryl, we're so glad that you're here with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's so fun to see everybody's face. We appreciate the opportunity to share. You guys have shared so much with us that we have taken in. So I feel it a privilege to share some of the things that we have learned. So when it comes to the roundtable for us, and as far as getting people to come, we have to say that Ron and Joan McLean, who started the Healthy Marriage Coalition in 2004, they are known so well in the community that by the time we came on board and we started doing the breakfast, it was so much easier because there was a relationship already built. So for someone that's starting from scratch, it looks a little bit different. We were blessed to have those relationships established already. So thanks, Ron.
So Stephanie has given us some of your questions. So we're going to try and answer some of those. And of course, you can ask more during the Q&A at the end too. One of the questions was like, how many pastors come?
So we have probably 15 to 20 pastors come every week. It can be pastors quarterly. Sorry, thank you.
Every week.
You just threw me off.
Oh, sorry. So yeah. So like you said, we have, usually between 15 and 20 pastors coming. And so another question was, do you divide it up into counties? Well, we have a big county. Fresno County is 1 million people. And so, and then the city of Fresno is 500,000. So basically we don't divide it. We are Fresno County. That's who we serve. And so we have pastors coming from Fresno and Clovis, which is right next to us. And then a lot of the small counties, small cities within our county.
And then we invite pastors, but we also ask them to invite either the marriage ministry leaders with them or another pastor. If you can get more than one from the church is helpful. So when they take it back, they can kind of play off that a little bit. So really anybody is invited if they're in the marriage ministry field. And between 15 and 20, our desire at this point is to continue that to grow. And when you get 500,000 people in your city, we have a lot of work we still want to do. But we will tell you that we really are enjoying the pastors that are coming. They're getting more and more consistent, and it's developing a relationship with them that's important. But also they're developing a relationship with each other, which is very exciting.
So we call them pastors' breakfasts, and we've been doing this for about a little over 3 years, probably like right after we started, with the CMI, and we do them about 3 to 4 times a year. And so we send out an email, or Ron sends out an email to about 35 pastors, and then we're building on that list all the time too. And like Dave said, we encourage the pastors too to bring their staff. Sometimes they bring an intern, any ministry leaders too. So, and then Ron reminds them with a little email a couple of days before the breakfast. Why is that important?
We'll talk more about this, but pastors are busy, and there's so many things going on, and we've just learned that if they don't get that little reminder, that morning sneaks on by and they miss it. They want to be there, but sometimes they forget. So that we really appreciate Ron doing that, sending that reminder out, because that makes a big difference.
And a lot of people have like lunches and stuff like that. And we've just figured that the breakfast work for us. They get there early, and then, then their day is started, and they don't have to break up and come somewhere. So the breakfast has worked well for us. It started at 7.
No matter what you do, you're not going to get everybody. There's some people that have been once and they just said, I hate getting up in the morning. And then other people get there, and we started at 7 o'clock. And they wonder, well, how come we don't start at 6? So you're not going to win. You're not going to get them all. But we found that this probably works the best for us.
So another one of the questions was, how do you gear the round table if you have a smaller group?
So group size, we don't think it really matters. What matters with the group size is, how you organize it. The more people they are, the more people that if they're going to talk is going to take up more time. And it seems like no matter what we do, we never have enough time. Anytime you want to relay some information on, it just goes too quick. It's very important for us that we honor their time. They're busy. And so when we say it starts at 7 and it's done at 8:30, it doesn't really matter where we're at. At 8:30, we're done no matter where we are. Again, it's important to honor their time. And the other big thing is the size of group doesn't matter. It's what they're going to get out of it. It's what benefit is it for them to come, regardless if it's 2 people or 100 people. We need to make sure that there's a reason they got there. Is there a benefit? So that's something that plays through our mind throughout the planning stage, and then when they're there, to make sure that it's beneficial for them.
I see Amy asked, are they regular attenders or new people each time? We have a lot of regular attenders, but we also have new people too coming too. So, sometimes we'll see somebody once and we won't see them next time, and then they'll come back. And so, yeah, we do definitely have regular attenders. And are these churches are we actively working with these churches? Some of them we are. And then some of them just kind of come to the pastor's breakfast, and that's when we see them.
Well, and the goal is to get them to the pastor's breakfast, and then we're going to be able to work with them actively in the church. They need to get to know us. That's something that we've learned is for the right reasons. Pastors are very protective over their flock, as they should be. And if they don't know who you are, they're not going to invite you in. So when they come to the pastor's breakfast, especially time after time, they get to know us a little bit and they feel much more comfortable about that. And a little bit later, we'll share a little bit more why that works.
Yeah, I think when we have a smaller group, we can talk as a whole, like especially if we're going to have a discussion or something. But if it's a bigger group, sometimes we'll split them into, and we know ahead of time usually how many people are coming. And so we'll split them into like smaller groups if we're going to have a discussion.
That, again, it's such a challenge. As soon as you have that discussion, that eats into your hour and a half really quick. It's important because they need to be able to talk amongst each other, but it's the organization to make sure that you have time to get everything in. You can't just let them run wild because there's some people that have more time than others.
Yeah. Okay. Another question was, what does your agenda look like? So like Dave said, we keep it to an hour and a half, 7 to 8:30. We serve breakfast. We have breakfast burritos. And like Stephanie said, our area is kind of known for tri-tip. It's kind of like a part of the cow. So the guys like tri-tip burritos. And we also have sausage and bacon burritos too. We get them at like this little local AM PM store. You know, they're really good there. They're well known for that. And then we serve that because it's easy. They just walk in, they grab a burrito. We have some fruit there, some juice, some coffee. And so from about 7 to 7:25, we eat. And then they just kind of like visit. Hey, how are you doing? You know, they only sometimes see each other once a quarter because they're pastors from different churches. And then about 7:25, we start getting into like our roundtable discussion, whatever. If we have a speaker that day, if there's a pastor, another leader that's going to lead it. Yeah.
And then what's next?
Okay. And then after we like present something or somebody's presenting something, then we usually open it up for discussion on that topic. We might hand out some questions, or maybe we just ask questions. We want interaction about that topic. Let's see. And then sometimes we'll hand out even like little questions for them to get in, you know, like a little group to talk about things. And so like one time we handed out questions, we divided them into like groups of 4, and we gave them a question that said, if you had the money and staff, what is your dream of what your marriage ministry would look like at your church? And they got really excited about that, you know, and they started to talk about their vision, and then they started making plans like, what could we do now, you know, to start making that go, but just getting them excited.
And then we got them all back together. We had some of them share what those visions were for the whole group. And that helped us because once we heard some of those visions that they had, it let us know what we could do to help them fulfill that vision. So they enjoyed it, and it was very helpful for us too.
Right. And then towards the end, then we make any announcements about classes or events coming up. If there's any resources we have, like an event, that we give them out flyers. If we've done a topic on, you know, maybe an author, we'll hand them the book, like we'll buy them all a book and give them to them. And we just appreciate our grant money for us being able to do things like this.
The book thing, it's again, we really are trying to make sure that there's value in whatever we do. And in the book, there's definitely value, but society's changing. As not as many people read books as they used to. And so we know that when we give them a book, that's good for half of them. So typically when we do the book, part of the deal is during, and we might be talking, we're the presenters for that breakfast. We give them the highlights of the book.
Yeah.
They need to know what's in the book, whether they're going to spend their time and effort reading the book. And so books are good. I think it shows value, but it might not be as valuable to everybody as to some. So.
Yes. And somebody asks, is breakfast free? Does your grant pay for the breakfast books? Yes. Thank you, CMI. It does. And so it is free for everyone to come, and they enjoy that. They enjoy seeing each other and grabbing a free burrito. So, and if we have extra, we let them take one with them, and they like that. Let's see. So, sometimes what we do is we ask a pastor to give a testimonial about us coming into their church. Like if we went into their church to do a training or a class, you know, and then they stand up and they tell how that was, that makes a huge impact on the other pastors.
We we had one church there that I think I probably talked with the pastor over 3 or 4 years. And they always said, you know what, this sounds great. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. And then all of a sudden, next quarter, oh yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. As soon as that one a different pastor had got up and shared what it did to their church, he came up to me after the breakfast and said, okay, can you start next week? So it's one thing when we're telling people what we can do. It's another thing when another church will say, this is what they did for us. So that was really helpful.
Yeah. So have those pastors give those testimonials. Let's see, some of the topics that we've talked about in our roundtable. We always ask ourselves, what is the value we're giving them? Thanks, Carl. And so our topics could depend on the month of the year. Like in January, that's like divorce season. And so I know you guys have heard this before, but the Monday when the kids go back to school after the holidays is the most calls attorneys receive on looking into having a divorce. And so we want to make sure that the pastors are prepared for what may be happening in their church. We usually have a Valentine's event. So hopefully we've told them about that in our November pastor's breakfast, so they can get, like, one pastor's like, oh, okay, so I should plan sermons on marriage in February. So we have to give them a heads up for that. You can't tell them that in January. But so we usually have some promotional material to give out, and we're inviting them to come to the Valentine event. And like last year, we had a big event, and thank you to the grant again. We were able to give out free tickets to go to the event. It was Ted Lowe we had last year. And we were able to give out free tickets to the staff, and we just handed out, lots of tickets. And
again, it's that value.
Yeah.
They came and they got something for that.
They loved it.
The other part is churches, this was new to me from being in the restaurant world. Everything was quick. Churches don't move at that pace. And so they plan, 6 months or a year and ahead. So what's really helpful is the pastor's breakfast, October, November or something. It's when we started promoting Marriage Week. They need to know what's coming. And so to be able to tell them, and then when we had the January one, we could actually give them more information. But they needed it to know that before, so they could kind of get that in their schedule. Again, maybe it could be in their sermon. And then the January comes and we actually give them handouts, flyers or whatever it takes. So that's the planning is really important. And so to be thinking about that, when to have your breakfast or lunch or whatever it is, based on what's coming up ahead.
We don't spend a lot of money on like having speakers come in. We usually use like local people. So like one of the pastors who started coming regularly wrote a book on premarital counseling. And so we had him just kind of come in and talk about premarital counseling. And then he gave the book for free, to all of the people that were there. So that was a good thing. We also had a counseling center come in, and they talked about what they do, as far as with the couples. They talked about giving out free counseling, even like to some of the pastors, like a session or so. And so that was good for them. It's a resource for the pastors, to be able to know where they could send their people if they don't have time to counsel them. Let's see.
We need to go quicker. We'll get rid of time.
Okay.
As she's looking up to answer one of the questions, do you always meet at the same location? And the answer is no, and actually for a really good reason. We found that it's been really fun. At the end of the breakfast, we always ask, would another church like to host it for next time? And typically, there's always someone that volunteers. If not, we'll call someone and ask them. But really, what that's doing, those people that volunteer, it's getting them involved. It's bringing them in. And we've also noticed that, rightly so, that they're proud of their facility or their church. And then usually when our breakfast is over, it's 8:30, it's time for us to be done. The pastors will hang around, and usually the hosting pastor will actually then take the other people around because the other pastors are interested. And so they get to share that, again, building that relationship, not with us, but with each other.
Right. And then also sometimes we'll say, so what do you guys want to hear about? What do you want us to, bring to you, to your pastor's breakfast? And a couple of the pastors said, well, we have a lot of blended families in our congregation. We like to hear about blended families. So we got a blended couple who came, and they're starting to volunteer in our ministry. And they gave their story, and it was very impactful, very vulnerable. And the pastors asked a lot of questions, and now they're asking them to come to their churches. And we have a curriculum that we're starting now, where we've blended our Marriage Works book with some of Ron Deal's material, and so they're doing that, and so the pastors were really interested in that. So it was good to ask them what they like too.
I think that really shows them that we care about them. We asked them what they want. They told us what they want, and then we were able to give it to them. Again, it's the value that they were looking for, and that's why I think we're building in the right direction.
Yes. And when, like Dave said, we've talked about books before, like we read Get Married by Brad Wilcox, and then we gave them all the book, and they've got the happy chart out there, and what builds happiness in marriages. And it's not just having a degree or having a job, it's being happily married. So anyway, those were good things. We talked about the good news about marriage, that divorce isn't 50%.
That was huge to be able to give pastors some information that they probably don't spend a lot of time in the marriage field reading books and stuff because they're so busy. And so we've been so blessed being a part of the CMI to have all that stuff, all those talked about, and then we're able to share. And again, we take some highlights out of the book. And so in the good news about marriage, to tell them that society says that the divorce rate is the same in church as out of the church. Well, that book talked directly to that, and that's not true. It's the way that they did the study and stuff. And so to share stuff like that with them encourages them, but also excites them a little bit, and they could read the book. And we gave them more information out of that. That was a great book to share with them, because a lot of them have never heard that. A lot of them even make the myth go even further, saying that the marriage is 50% or divorce is 50%, and it's just not true. So that was helpful. The happy chart, that was huge. Again, pastors don't necessarily have the time to know what's going on in the marriage industry and stuff, and because that's what we do all the time, we hear all these things. Pastors have told us that they appreciate what we do, and that it keeps on the forefront of their mind what's going on with marriage today, which will help them when they're doing their sermons or whatever it is, to be able to get that out there. So,
yeah. So what are they walking away with? They're walking away with encouragement. We're giving them resources. We're giving them new ideas, because they spend a lot of time, developing their sermons, and studying God's word, but do they know what's really going on with marriage? We gave them information, like we said, from the books that we've given them.
From Carl's speak on the perspective.
The marriage trends. They really like that too. Yeah. So that was good.
Using the information we learned from you guys, passing on to them has been real helpful.
Yes. And, they come and they're not interested in doing a lot of work. They don't see value in coming somewhere where they're given more things to do. Okay. And so they have enough on their plates. So we just try and come alongside them, tell them what the resources are that we have. Yeah. Let's see. And so in closing, like Dave said, we do this to keep marriages at the forefront of their minds. They know marriage is important, but they're busy, and that slips away. But by doing the quarterly breakfast, they're reminded of the importance of marriage and what they can be doing as a church.
And we're open for any questions after it. So our time's up, so we'll stop there.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing, Dave and Cheryl. This was really, really, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the time that you took. And what I really love and what I take away from everything you talked about is just that your goal in every way is to add value to them for coming. And I think that's such an important detail. And so I think that is really great and just shows your heart for those pastors, and that you really are wanting to add value to them and build those relationships. And so I think that's so helpful. Well, our next speaker is Keith Tully. And if you don't know Keith, I'm going to give you a little information about him. Keith is just a great man, and he has served on the executive leadership team of Family Life. And for the last 20 years, Keith and his wife Trish have served Virginia. They are helping churches build proactive and sustainable marriage discipleship, and now they continue that work with the Virginia Marriage Initiative. And so Keith and Trish, they met as freshmen at William and Mary, and they have now been married for 37 years. They have 4 children and 5 grandchildren. Again, the best part there with the grandchildren. And their personal story of brokenness and redemption has been used by God to encourage thousands of marriages towards hope and good news of Jesus. And Keith just brings really a wealth of experience in what I believe creates environments where leaders just feel welcome, they feel heard, and they feel inspired to take action together. So he's going to share his insights on those intentional gatherings and how they can help move your community forward. So Keith, we are ready to learn from you today.
Thank you so much, Steph. And Dave and Cheryl, thank you. That was so practical and so helpful. I was writing notes the entire time. I really love the practical ways you're adding value for the pastors and leaders that are in your space. That was really, really helpful. I know I have a teammate, my teammate, Rebecca Blackwell, is on, and I know we're going to have a conversation afterwards of which of those do we need to put into place. But what I wanted to start with was just how important vision is in everything that you're doing, but especially around your roundtables. The Word of God, tells us this is the King James version, but I think it instructs us very well that without vision, the people perish. And that principle is true for our entire initiative. We have to be casting vision continually. And it has to be a big vision. Bill Bright, who started Crew, which we serve with in Campus Crusade for Christ, when I heard him say this, it just resonated so deeply with my heart. Small dreams do not inflame the hearts of men. And so for our marriage initiatives as a whole, we have to be casting this kingdom vision, this vision that's bigger than we are. Bill Bright also had on his desk, and I walked into his office one time and I saw this. He had a little tablet that said, "We are not grasshoppers." And it was a reference to the Old Testament when the 12 men went into Israel, and 10 of them came back and said, "There's no way we can take it." And the 2 of them said, they said, "We look like grasshoppers in their eyes." But there were 2 that believed and moved forward in faith. But we need to cast a big vision, and our vision needs to be bigger than our own marriage initiative. Yes, we're longing to do something great. Dave and Cheryl in Fresno, Rebecca and Mark and I in Virginia, we want to see God do something great. But it's bigger than a marriage initiative. We want to see his kingdom come. And that vision's even bigger than ours. And so we have to keep that larger vision in perspective. And it's very true of our roundtables. So honestly, I think having vision a part of every aspect of your roundtable is really important for them to be successful and to have the kingdom impact that you're longing for them to have. So recently we're a new marriage initiative. We're just over a year old. And when Steph first asked me, "Hey, Keith, would you share what you guys are doing?" I thought, well, why don't we just tell them to do everything that Carl says? He's the best. And that's what we're trying to do, is just everything he's instructed us. But around this vision piece, we had our vision written out. And recently we were trying to develop a card that we would do as a chair drop at a weekend to remember, that would, real clearly and in a picture format, cast the vision of where we were hoping to go. And God kind of gave us this image. We want to create thriving marriages that leave godly legacies and transform their communities. Just that simple, but that was the vision language that we needed in a picture. And we're going to do that by increasing marriage and reducing divorce. So just, I just thought that was exciting what God did. But getting to the round tables, we try and include vision language in every piece of it. In our invitations, we want to keep casting vision as part of the roundtable. And I think, yes, we want to give them value, but we also want to invite them into something that's much bigger than themselves. And these pastors and marriage leaders and marriage champions, that's what inflames their heart, is being part of something bigger than themselves. So we want that vision as part of the agenda. And then we want it in our follow-up communication. So every aspect of the roundtable, we want vision in it. This is some of our vision language that we use. The top one is kind of our vision statement. We want marriages to flourish and leave godly legacies that transform communities. And then we have vision language around marriage that we use in a lot of our communications. Marriage is one of the good things God gave us in creation. It's not just marriage, it's a mission. More marriage, less divorce, marriages that tell the truth about God. And now these are our tagline is get married, stay married, enjoy the journey. And God gave that to Rebecca in our brainstorming phase. And it's a beautiful tagline. And that tagline we use in the community, right? We use that tagline all the time when we're trying to encourage people to invest in their relationships. But this vision language is for those marriage champions and the pastors and the marriage leaders. This is the kind of language we use with them. So here's a picture of our January 10th roundtable. And we had about 60 people there from 25 different churches in the community. Some pastors, some marriage leaders, some organizational leaders, nonprofit leaders. But this is how we incorporated that vision into this roundtable. We had a speaker couple, Larry and Sharon Pompelli, who had been missionaries in Africa for 25 years. And they had been part of a move of God there. It was when AIDS came, and no one even knew. AIDS hadn't even been named yet, but there were people just dying all around them. People they were leading to Jesus were dying. So Sharon had a real heart to teach purity and abstinence. And she went to a school and said, "Hey, I'd like to talk to the kids about purity." And the people said, "Oh, no, we just give them condoms." That's what the secretary said. "We just give them condoms." And she said, "Well, do you give your children condoms?" And these secretaries ended up going to the leader of the school, and they came back to her and said, "You can talk to our kids." After she talked to the kids in that school, these secretaries, one of them had a relationship with the first lady of the nation. And she ended up being their biggest advocate. And they ended up, because of the first lady, ended up going to almost every school in that nation and sharing about purity. And there was a move of God because this humble couple said yes. And 10 years later at the National Congress on World Health, the divorce rate of that nation was 78%. I'm sorry. The AIDS rate in that nation was 78% down because of the work of this one humble couple. And so they shared that story. And what it was a story of a move of God. And it's what all of us are longing to be part of. We're not going to be able to do anything of our own effort. It has to be what he does. So they shared this story, and then they tied it to the work that all of these marriage champions were doing in Virginia. This is what they said. Well, they shared on keys to cooperating with a move of God. So this was just a vision talk, and these were their points. It needs to be led by him. It needs to be saturated in prayer. It need to be united across denominations. You need to have continued dependency. All the things that we need to see if there's going to be a move of God in our space, right? And then they ended by saying this, and they said this was such passion, but the work of God we did in Uganda was life or death. Our urgency needs to be the exact same in this mission. There are marriages and families dying all around us. And just calling people, to this bigger vision, and that it was worth investing their lives for. So that's how we, in that January roundtable, the short, and that was a 15-minute message, but it cast vision and invited them into something bigger than themselves. And the couples left going, our desire, our ask of God is that we'd see the divorce rate go down by 30% in the next 5 years. And everybody left with, yes, God can do that. If he can bring the AIDS rate down by 70% in a nation, he can change the divorce rate in Virginia if we lean in and join him in what he's doing. So that's how we incorporated the vision casting into that roundtable. Another phrase we use, kind of a vision phrase, is our desire is to fan into flame a move of God around marriages and families. And we kind of use that vision phrase often with these marriage champions. So these were some thoughts on ways to, I think, some of the keys to make a roundtable successful. And honestly, if you just implement everything Dave and Cheryl said, they're going to be successful. But following the Holy Spirit, I think, is really important. Even if you have a rhythm like Dave and Cheryl do, you want to hear from the Lord what you're supposed to bring to them next. What is going to add value to them? What are their needs? You want to respond to their needs. Dave and Cheryl shared that really well, how they asked about their needs, and one of them mentioned blended. Really respond to their needs. As much as we can, we're trying to engage the Marriage Coalition members in every part of it, in the planning of what the roundtable, the content's going to be, in the hosting of it. We're asking different churches to host every roundtable that we have, because we want to engage those churches and for them to have more ownership. So we're always finding or developing relationships and asking them to host, engaging them in that way. And then in the inviting, Dave and Cheryl shared about Ron inviting because of the depth of his relationships with people. We're trying to engage the pastors that have the strongest networks and the leaders that have strong networks. We're trying to engage them and inviting with us, because they're going to reach people that we can't reach. And then this is honestly something I think might be subject of another day, but we use what Family Life calls a nuclear invitation strategy. And this is really something that there's some other Family Life staff on here that are leaning into initiatives. This is how we encourage our coaching and invitations for the weekend to remember. So it's something we've learned from Family Life. But essentially, after you're emailing the invitation, you're texting every single person, and you're doing it based on a relationship. But immediately after that text, you're calling them. And the text and then call shows an urgency to, you're serious about this. There's an urgency to what we're doing. This is kingdom work. And the call immediately, the text before the call lets them know who you are. If it's not somebody you've interacted with before, lets them know you're a volunteer, lets them know you're not trying to sell something. And then often they'll receive the call. So we always text before our call. But we're doing all three. We're emailing, texting, and calling. And then we're going back and we're texting and calling again if we don't get in touch with them. And then a week before, if they haven't responded, we're sending another text with an invitation and the link for them to RSVP. And often that is the most fruitful interaction. So our texts and calls and the email, they're like seeds that have been planted. And then when we follow up again a week beforehand, the harvest comes, all the people register. And so we'll probably see, 50 to 70, 75% of the people will register in the last week to 10 days, but we've communicated with them about it much earlier. So anyway, I believe that's one of the practical steps to have a roundtable that's successful. And yes, no matter how many people are there, God's going to use it. But when they see more people there than they expect, it creates a joy and expectation that God's doing something more than them, that they're part of something bigger. So I think it helps um, to have a gathering that has some, I don't know what the right way to say it is, has enough people there that it surprises people when they walk in. One of the things that we've heard after each of our roundtables is, I'm just so surprised that so many churches are involved, whether it's 20 people or 50 people. And I think that surprise is winsome for the people that come to participate. Dave and Cheryl shared some of the regular elements of theirs. Here's some of the regular elements of our roundtables. And again, this is just hopefully echoing what you've all heard from Carl. But we always have a vision piece, whether that's in the featured speaker or it's a smaller element, but there's always going to be an invitation into the move of God that we're asking him for. We always have a table time where they're able to connect with each other and sharpen one another. We're only a year old, but we've seen so many of those relationships that started at tables have turned into people working together on a date night or some kind of effort together. And it happens without us having anything to do with it. It's just happening naturally because they're interacting at the tables. We are setting up the marriage coalition to give to one another. So Larry and Sharon are at one of the churches that are part of the marriage coalition. In our next roundtable in April, what we're doing, which we think will add a lot of value, is we're going to introduce re-engage and grace marriage to all the churches, to everybody who's at that roundtable. And the re-engage is a church that started re-engage a year ago because we helped them develop a marriage strategy. And the church that is sharing about Grace Marriage started Grace Marriage about a year ago because we helped them develop a marriage strategy. So here's two churches that are part of the marriage coalition that are going to be sharing their stories and what impact they've seen in the marriages because of these discipleship programs. And we're going to be giving to everyone at that roundtable, this vision, and they'll be able to process whether it's going to work in their space or not. And then both of those churches are going to open up their next gathering of Reengage and Grace Marriage for anybody from the coalition who wants to come and participate, to explore further how it could look in their space. So again, just setting up the marriage coalition to give to each other, right? And in that, we were also, I had shared how important it is to follow the Holy Spirit. That idea came out of just regular visits with the marriage champions and the pastors at the churches and hearing what God was doing in those spaces. And, it was just real evident when I had a conversation with each of those within 24 hours of each other, that it would be an incredible opportunity for other churches to hear. So we're actually, I think it's really good to have rhythms, but we're not scheduling those on a certain day 3 times a year. We're kind of allowing things to develop and seeing where God's working, who we're supposed to ask to host, and starting with that and what time or what day would work for that host church. So we're doing it a little bit. I'm not as structured, but trying to follow the Holy Spirit in that. But our intent is to do at least 3 of these roundtables a year. That's our expectation. Dave and Cheryl shared great ideas about adding value for them. Part of it is always sharing the near term opportunities with them, where they can continue to grow, or the marriage champions in their space can grow. And so when we get together in April, we'll be sharing about a Prepare and Rich mentor training that's coming soon after, and a marriage ministry workshop that's available soon after. So we'll always share about the near-term opportunities that will add value to them. And then I just wanted to share one other idea that I think might be helpful for everybody. And this will be real quick and I'll be done. But when we were launching our marriage initiative, this is the strategy we used. But I think it's a strategy that can be used to launch any specific initiative that you're doing. If you have something that you want to invite them into, you can do this kind of strategy. So what we did is we engaged numerous partners and churches that we had relationships with and asked them if they would host a roundtable in a span of 3 days. And we had 7 roundtables that were hosted over a 3-day period in different parts of the city by different denominations, in different demographics. So there was a very diverse group, but it was all in a 3-day period. And then they invited with us. And as they invited their contacts, they didn't just invite them to their roundtable, they invited them to one of the 7. So if they couldn't come to theirs, they went to one of the others. So I think if you could do a saturation strategy like this with roundtables, and if you have a statewide one, you could hold a dozen of them across the state in a week. You could offer physical and virtual opportunities, and in every one of those include vision, story, and a clear call to action. As you're trying to move them towards a specific action or goal together. So in our example, we had 7 churches and partner organizations that hosted roundtable gatherings over 3 days last June. And we had 110 pastors, marriage leaders, and marriage champions, about 50 churches from the city of Richmond that were represented there. And that was the beginning of our marriage initiative. So those were some thoughts that I thought might add some value to what Dave and Cheryl shared.
All right. Thank you so much, Keith, for sharing. We're so grateful for your wisdom. And I love all the vision language and the importance you place on just sharing and casting that vision and getting the community involved with the vision for marriage. So thank you for sharing with us today. And now we're going to open the floor for questions and also conversation. So if you guys have a question for any of our speakers today, or if you would like to share what's worked at your roundtable events, we'd love to hear what's been working for all of you too. So please raise your virtual hand and I will call on you. All right, Tom.
Yeah, I had a question for you, Keith, kind of a follow-up, kind of a little off the straight point you were making, but you're involved with the Weekend to Remember. How could you utilize those events to maybe recruit or identify marriage leaders who might want to come to a round table? Or are those events different that may not be utilized for that purpose, do you think?
Oh no, we're absolutely using them. We actually have 3 Weekends to Remember in Virginia, and the chair drop that they do at lunchtime, they've allowed us to change to have an introduction to the Virginia Marriage Initiative on the back of it. Very similar to what they do in San Antonio. And then we're inviting to, the roundtables are one of the next stop opportunities. And because I work with each of those family life teams, we're inviting, the natural invitation is to a Marriage on Mission gathering after the Weekend to Remember. We introduce the Virginia Marriage Initiative to all of those missional marriages that come to those gatherings and share the roundtables that are coming up or the trainings that are coming up. So it's, if you don't have a relationship with the Weekend to Remember local team or the Family Life local team in your area, it'd be great to build one. Go slow, and there'll be tremendous fruit in the future as you go slow in that relationship and learn to serve each other.
That's great. Thank you for your question, Tom, and thanks for your answer, Keith. Anyone else? And if you don't have a question, we'd love to hear what's working for you too. Keith.
At our January roundtable in Richmond, it was both a roundtable and a follow-up gathering from the Williamsburg Weekend to Remember. So we had our roundtable, and then we had a 30-minute space at the end of it where anybody who was interested in the Family Life local team could stay and hear about the local team. So what was interesting is lots of the missional marriages from the Weekend to Remember heard the big vision for the Virginia Marriage Initiative. And then some of those people who came for the Virginia Marriage Initiative stayed and learned about the local team. And one of those couples actually got on the local team. So it was beneficial both directions.
That's great. That's great. Anyone else have anything to share? Dennis.
So first of all, I thought both presentations were great. So thank you both groups to be speaking. And as I scanned the people on the call, I noticed that one of the people that Dave and Cheryl referred to was the famous or infamous Ron McLean. And so I'm going to go a little bit off topic here, but because the Fresno Healthy Marriage Coalition is really one of the longest established healthy marriage coalitions that we work with. I believe initial funding of that actually came from part of a federal grant that I was involved with Ron back in 2006. I don't know if they were formed before then or not, but I've been wearing for at least 20 years. So Ron and Joan McLean were the launchers of this ministry, and a number of years ago they passed it on to Dave and Cheryl. So I'd kind of like to hear from Ron. Ron, as you listen to Dave and Cheryl talk, and they mention you by name, saying that you're sending out emails, and they mention the fact that you had built this relationship with these people, with the pastors over the years. So when they stepped in, that was there. And I see you still active. At least you're sending emails and you're on this call, and I see you from time to time. I'd kind of like to hear from your perspective as the founder. Like, there's several questions, like what's it like to be listening in from your founder's chair to see that the work that you started these 20 years ago or more is still continuing? Why don't we start there, and then I may have another follow-up question. So speak from that founder's chair. Give us that legacy view. So speak on anything you'd like.
Well, thank you. Let me talk about the Seattle Seahawks, if you don't mind. No, no, just kidding. Well, we started in 2004. I was a pastoral counselor at a counseling center, and I was doing premarital counseling for a lot of churches. And I had this brainstorm, which isn't that big of a brainstorm, really, but I thought, why couldn't we train lay couples in churches to train other couples? And that's how the idea started of Marriage Mentoring Ministries, which morphed into the Healthy Marriage Coalition. And so we started that by actually having a breakfast for pastors in the area. We brought a guest speaker in from Oakland, a black pastor, to speak. And we had, I think about 85 pastors initially, just to hear the idea and the vision of what's now the Healthy Marriage Coalition. So we started off the first 2 years by training and equipping couples from about 40 different churches to be mentors in their churches. And we were so pleased that so many people were interested in this, because especially pastors who were overburdened already and wanted to see their people equipped. So that was the vision to begin with. And then to just add to that, some special events that Dennis has participated into, including Christian night at the ballpark, and just different ideas to get the broader community involved. We did training with Caltrans employees, anybody that would want somebody to come in and work with their employees in the area of communication on their staff. We did some pretty fun stuff there too, and that was cool because you can promote your classes and trainings at those events as well. And then getting involved in the media, we have some really great media people here and politicians. A lot of our politicians are Christian, believe it or not, and so we really benefited from working with them as well, having them speak at our special annual event that we have every year. And so the idea is you can do the trainings in a smaller venue, but you can also keep your eye on the whole community. Fresno County is over 1 million people, and we've even gone beyond that to Madera County and Kings County in different ways. But having someone like Dave and Cheryl, I'm telling you, they were a godsend all the way along, and have been just such a blessing to watch them expand what we started. And I couldn't be prouder of them. And I love them very much.
Ron, you mentioned the ballpark. I'm curious. Do you recall the words that were on the banner on that was in the ballpark? Do you remember what that was?
Yes, I do.
Would you
So there's
share
a
that with the
huge,
group?
it was a huge banner. It was like 40 feet by, I don't know, 8 feet high. And it said, hit a home run with your wife. Attend a marriage mentoring or marriage class in your area.
And what was cool about the banner is that was on the outfield sign. So every time there was a home run hit, that came into play. And of course, you look at the news broadcast, they'd always broadcast when their team had a home run. And so that banner got considerable airplay. So
It did, yeah.
so Ron,
And
how does it feel to be looking now 22 years later? This organization you founded, that it's still continued, that it's still continuing without as nearly as active involvement.
Yeah.
What's that feel like to you as that founder?
Well, it's hard to describe. First of all, I'm so thankful to God for leading and directing us. Keith mentioned listening to the Holy Spirit, which is the key, I think, because sometimes I can get ahead of the Lord, I think, and what He wants, and sometimes I'm behind Him. So it's just good to listen to Him. But I am so appreciative of the Holy Spirit, and knowing that the vision, the mission of what we're doing is really the mission of the Great Commission: go and make disciples. So I do a lot of counseling now for the coalition and my home church with couples, and I just every time I'm with a couple, I'm thinking of discipleship, because it's 2-on-2 discipleship, mentoring is, and just equipping them. Every couple I meet with, I use skills in my counseling, so it's not just listening and trying to diagnose anything, because I don't do that, but I want to give them the skills that we actually teach in groups to young couples and older couples too. And so I'm just blown away to see what God's doing. And I feel like we've kind of just started, and that we expect greater things in the days to come.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Ron. I wanted Ron to have a chance to speak to that because, guys, so many of the groups, you're in their first couple of years. I think, Keith, you mentioned that, you're about a year into it. And I know that when we start something, it's easy to be caught up in the day-to-day minutia. But I really want you to kind of hold up Fresno as an example. That's what we're building here. We're not just building for the 10 or 15 or 20 churches that are the most active right now. These are seeds that are planting for an institution to support the institution of marriage. And you think about, one of the slogans that Keith talked about was looking at here, we want marriages to flourish and leave godly legacies and that transform communities. But look at the godly legacy that Ron and Joan McLean launched 22 years ago. That's what we're talking about here with all the groups. So the CMI fund, we provide $100,000 of funding for 3 years. But that's meant just to launch, you guys. It's not a one and done. It's 3 years as a launch pad to build that long-term organization that has deep roots in the community, like Fresno's coalition does, that has deep connections with multiple churches. That's what we're building for, because that will allow that third part of Keith's slogan. His 3-part was one: we want marriages to flourish. Number 1, they'll leave godly legacies. And number 2, number 3, that transform communities. Guys, Community transformation doesn't happen in a moment. It takes time and it takes patience and it takes perseverance and it takes the type of work of these roundtables that we're networking with these churches, we're coming alongside them and we're consulting with them, we're meeting their needs so they can serve so many other people. So again, thank you, the Beldens. Thanks, Ron. Thanks. Were you going to say something else, Ron?
Yeah, if I could just say also, none of this would have happened without the support of my wife. I mean, she is an amazing person who works behind the scenes.
There's Joan.
She does a lot of the administrative work. And, when we first started the ministry, I just went to her and I said, if you're not sensing this from the Holy Spirit, then I don't want to move forward. I want you to be, part of this and a big part of it. And she has just been an incredible support. There's days when you get discouraged in this work, God is the great encourager, and he's definitely encouraged me through my wife. So I just want to give her kudos. Yeah.
Thanks, Ron. Steph, I now return the meeting back to you.
Okay. Yes, I was just going to say everybody who knows Joan loves Joan. Joan's amazing. So
Sweet Joan.
Yes, she's amazing. So, but thank you so much, Dennis, for facilitating that conversation, because I think that was really valuable for everybody to hear that and just to see the bigger picture of this is just seed that they're planning to leave a legacy and for this to continue on for years and years to come. So thank you for that, Dennis. Tom, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had one more for Dave and Cheryl. You made an interesting comment. You said you asked pastors if money was no object, what they would do to promote marriage. And that sounds like almost a focus group of pastors. And I'm just curious, are there 2 or 3 or 4 key takeaways you had from that conversation you could share?
Well, I think all of them wanted some staff people to be, typically when it comes to a church, the marriage ministry falls under one of the pastors that has, 20 other jobs. And so if they could have a pastor that was just part of the marriage ministry, was part of it. But I also think when they were talking about their dreams, and they all shared with each other, they realized how hard it was. It was like, okay, this might not happen, but what can we do? It was a good question. It was thought provoking. So I think that was some of the value of that.
All right. Thank you for your question, Tom, and thanks for that answer, Dave and Cheryl. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share before we hop off today? Well, all right. We have come to the end of the hour, so I do want to just say thank you guys so much for attending today. This has been such a great conversation, just so much good insight that we've learned, and I want to say thank you to Dave and Cheryl and to Keith for taking the time to share and prepare for today. You've each shared some really great things with us that I know that everybody will carry on. And so I do want to make a couple of announcements about what's coming up in our training events. Next month, Chris Thayer from Charlotte is going to be covering a tool for serving churches. And this is a relational health assessment that he has developed. And it's just an amazing tool. He's going to give a live demonstration of this assessment. And so this is a tool you don't want to miss out on because it's something that you could really utilize to help support churches. So that's coming up next month. And then in May, we're going to be covering beyond the roundtable and just sustaining that community impact. So it's going to be all about keeping the momentum going after your roundtable event. Carl will be speaking on that one. And so you want to just be sure to mark your calendars for the third Friday of each month. That's when these take place at noon Central Time. And in the meantime, if you guys need anything, if you have any feedback for me, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at steph@marriageinitiative.org. I love hearing from you guys anytime. So as always, like I said, I will be sharing the recording to this event in an email next week along with Keith's slide deck. So just be on the lookout for that. And as always, guys, we are just so grateful that you guys are part of the CMI family. We love you guys so much. And we just pray that you guys have a blessed weekend. See you all later. Bye.